Hey, Smart Chiropractors. Welcome to the Smart Chiropractor Show. And the featured guest of today is a expert in documentation and compliance, an old friend of mine, and a great guy all around, and wine connoisseur, might I add, Dr.
Oh,
John Davila. John, how are you today?
you mean you're the connoisseur? You're the connoisseur. I just kind of hang out with you.
that is too kind. So for so many docs out there, documentation and compliance is a big pool to jump into, but I'd love to trace it back with you personally a little bit.
Oh.
You speak on stage a ton, and you are traveling always. Was being on stage always something you were interested in? How'd you become who you are today? Give me some origin story.
Oh my gosh. No, it was never anything I thought of. In fact, it's funny you asked that question because it makes me go back to a conversation I had with my son last week. It's weird how it's like, were you listening to this? We were talking about what he's going to school for. He's going to graduate from college in May, and he wants to get an MBA and then go to law school. And I'm trying to explain to him, I said, you don't realize what you're doing, what you think you're going to do today has zero to do with what you might be doing 5 years from now or 10 years from now. I mean, when I graduated from Palmer in 1994, if you had told me there was something called an EHR, I would have laughed at you. As far as like the electronic notes, what are you talking about? It's all paper. You just don't know what's coming out. And then for me to be someone talking about these certain things, never. I mean, I just wanted to go ahead and do what I do and enjoy it. And I love adjusting people even still, but it was never something that's like, oh, I see these people and I want to do that. That was never, I ended up there. It was never like a plotted out goal. Just because I never thought it was a deal. I never thought it was a thing.
I think that's fantastic because you never know where, and my path has been similar, where you never know where it will lead for sure. One of the things I appreciate with when I've seen you speak on documentation compliance, historically a super dry topic. I'm not telling anybody they don't know. However, you do just such a great job telling stories and giving real life examples. So when you were doing, I'm going to trace it back as well for patient education. Were you like great at patient education talks back in the day and then translated that to stage? And what were the skills, if you looked back early on, that gave you the opportunity to be one of the best presenters in my mind on one of the most challenging topics to be engaging about?
Yeah, that's funny you say that. I'll put it this way. I had a lot of speaking gigs for a long time for new patient drivers, like teachers, churches, all those kinds of things. And I would always try and become personable with them. And it wasn't a good thing or a bad thing. It was just like that was just how I did it. So it worked out perfect along those lines. Moving from that conversation into compliance, it was kind of the same thing. I mean, when you go from speaking to 5-10 people to trying to speak to the first time I remember you being in the room was like 900 people in St. Pete. And I remember having that big of room saying, no big deal. And you try to focus on one thing or, one person and the next person, things like that. Those are some of the skills that you have to learn as far as being able to control the attention of multiple different people. But as far as like speaking to 3, 4, 5 people, that's the easiest thing on the earth. Yeah. For me, it is, and it always has been. Being able to make it translatable to a ton of people is a little harder, and that took some work. I worked with Roberto Monaco, and he's been like the end all be all. I'm gonna say guru. I don't think the word guru. He's been the end all be all for me as far as training me to be able to speak to large groups of people and to use those stories. I had those stories. I'll put it this way. Sometimes in the topic that I speak on, the people that do it know so much, and the people sitting in the room know so little that you get to this point where you speak to the point where you are just saying, look, how smart am I? I'm so smart. Like, how smart am I? That kind of thing. And that can turn people off. And that gets to be almost like download. It's so didactic. It's, well, here's this, and here's this. How'd you not know this? And that conversation, that's one thing I had to learn as well, that the idea of the story to be able to connect with people want to know from the room into what's going on inside my head. The story is what makes it work because they have the same problem. They just don't know how to relate it to what the actual details are. You know what I mean? Because if they knew the details, they would need to listen to me because they'd already know. Yeah. So the story of how what we work or what we do for this person over here and how it worked, that story is what makes the other person go, oh, that's kind of like what I had. Oh, okay, now I can see where it comes together. Because what's funny is when I know someone picks something up in a conversation, I can tell because they can take the conversation that we had and apply it to other scenarios. And where all we're doing is changing what, like the name of a patient, or we're changing one small thing, but the actual topic is the same and the thrust is the same. If they can do that, I know they pick it up. So when I get into seminars and teaching in that situation, I really start going into multiple different ways. And some people go, hey, you told that story, and then you told another one just like it a few minutes later. Well, I know they're the same story, but they have different window dressing. Did it make sense to you? Oh yeah, it just solidified it for me. Perfect. That's exactly what I'm looking for, because I need you to be able to take the small piece, because I'm not with people all the time, to be able to tell them in the 75 different iterations of what it is they're learning, how it applies each time. They need to pick it up one time and then be able to apply it themselves as they go. Almost as if when you go shopping for a house, you go in with your wife and your wife says, I don't like that kitchen. Well, what is it? Is it the appliances or whatever? She says, I don't like the color of the wall. Well, we can paint the walls. That's fine. What if we painted the walls? Oh, then I'd like it. I said, okay, fine. It's the same thing in speaking. Someone may not get one thing, and it may be just the color of the wall. So you need to say it a different way so that goes, oh, that resonates with them. Then they go. So that's not something you pick up. That's something you learn, and it's something if you get a good speaking coach, you can actually build that together. But that's a learned thing, not just because I spoke to 5 people in a room. Trust me, it makes it easier to get there, but it's just a little bit of work to get to that end point.
That is a very, very powerful tip. And I just want to emphasize it for everybody watching and listening is I also believe the same thing. So many of us as chiropractors come out and we know so much, and then we get into these situations and it's just a blank slate because we don't know how little the person showing up at our practice, at our health talk, whatever it might be, knows. And that gap can create, there's no context. You have to translate the content into the right context and meet people where they are currently at and guide them along that process. 100%. I love that tip. And I'm going to ask you, let's go.
It makes too, Jeff, of paralysis through analysis, right? You get too much information, you become paralyzed, or you just don't understand one concept and everything else is a chain reaction from that. I just don't get, and I shut down.
Yeah.
So it's either one. So sometimes you can be too smart and you can tell them too much. And one of the things that's true, and this works also for when I was actually doing just patient education stuff, the less I did, the better results I got. And it's true about my seminars as well. The less data dump I give them and the more implementation stuff I give them, the better off my seminars are as well.
That is absolutely fascinating. Let's dive one level deeper on what we're discussing right now before we get into what docs need to know on documentation compliance. I find this fascinating. Us as chiropractors, as healthcare providers, as teachers, as educators, as healers, we are communicators at our heart. What are perhaps 2 primary tips for docs listening and watching that want to get better at speaking, whether it's small group or large group? What are 2 things that you would offer docs out there to improve their ability to communicate at a higher level with their audience, regardless of size?
Yeah, the first one is to be able to put yourself out there knowing that even a bad event's a good event. Practicing to the point where you're perfect to go do it makes no sense. Because let's say I had 10 people in a room and I totally and royally screwed it up, right? But I got 1 patient out of it, right? That's 1 life you could have changed. As compared to, I'm not ready yet. I'll postpone that until I get, that whole idea I don't like. A mantra that a friend of mine gave me, Roberto gave me, is never say no when it comes to a speaking event. Always say yes. Always say yes. Always say yes. Because even if it's 1 person, even if it's 5 people. Some of the most profitable from a business standpoint, profitable where we got the most clients, when we had 6 people in a room and I ended up getting 5 people as clients because one of them was actually a client who was there. So 5 out of 5 at an event, as compared to I could be in a room of 60 and get 4 people. You know what I mean? So it's really just putting yourself out there. That's the first one. The second one is that you have to be able to be honest and truthfully tell people what it is that you're feeling. You have to tell your story. If you don't tell your story, then people make one up for you. I'll tell the story of my life. Someone will make it up for me. So in that way, you have to be able to say to people, this is the reason why. You can't sell what you don't own. Yeah. You have to own what you're telling people and honestly feel that way. And if you do, it comes across. It's not sales anymore. And I think that's where some of the problems are in speaking, because I know you and I both know you go to an event, you sit in the seats, and it's just one sales pitch after another. And after the third time, I feel like a seal that's been beaten for my pelt. It's like, come on, give me. It's like, no, I can't do this anymore. But the truth is, I don't need to sell. And the reason I don't need to sell is because if I teach everything from the perspective of this person had this problem, this is what we did for them. Do you have that problem as well? Yes, I do. Okay, great. We'll talk to me later. I can get the same result without having to beat people over the head from a sales perspective, because I know it's my story. It's a story of how we've helped people, and it's a lot less salesy. And I think that's a big thing to transition to, from sales closing, hard sale close, hard sale. I'm not a fan. Give me something where I'm like, oh, I get it. Oh yeah, I need that. That's a more motivated buyer than, fine, take my money. Yeah.
I definitely hear you. This is like 12 minutes of an absolute masterclass in communication. I love it. But I also want to make sure that we talk a little bit of compliance and documentation, and to the point of the story, in your story, Custom Chiro Solutions. Before we get to what's the now and what do docs need to be aware of, what's been the evolution with what you've seen within Custom Chiro Solutions, where you started, where things are at today? How has the business changed as compliance, documentation, and practice has changed?
Yeah, that's funny. That's a great question, because I when I talk to people, I get this conversation because the first product that we ever created was macros for someone's EHR system. We customized their EHR system, and people would use them, right, and get audited and lose and call me up and go, Davila, you suck. I go, what did I do? And I'd go and I'd look at what they did, and I'd realize, oh, well, they don't know this, and they don't know what creates a billing profile. They don't understand what coding creates a profile. They understand, frequency. They don't understand medical necessity. They don't understand duration. They understand how to diagnose. They understand all these different things that would trip an audit wire start with. And it's almost like, how can I put it? It's almost like children. Like, I have two. The first one I love to death. She's wonderful. But the second one I had a lot more better, we'll call it luck with, because I knew what I screwed up on the first time. Okay. So the second one, because they don't come with instruction manuals, kind of like my business, I can kind of mold that one a little bit better. I love them equally, but you just do things differently with the two kids, Yep. And it's the same thing with our products. The macros were the first one, and I love them. They're my first one. They're my favorite, my dear product as far as what people know me for. Mm-hmm. But the thing is that they don't help you. And the reason why they don't help you is because unless you understand what an insurance carrier is looking for, notes themselves do nothing for you. And that was something that I had to go through as far as product, and then feedback from the field, and then looking at what the outcomes were to be able to figure out what needed to be done next in order for us to evolve. Because what it finally came down to was me understanding the game of, okay, if I get drunk, sit in the car, take off, the first person to tell me I'm drunk is the person with the blue lights behind me, and by then it's too late. And it never really dawned on me until, I started working with some doctors who were in these situations where they had a lot of notes. I mean, not just good notes, a lot of notes. And then I realized it's possible to over document to the point where your profile can't be overcome. And that's when I realized, okay, well, we need a second product, almost a second child that I know I can go ahead and cultivate differently than the first one. And that's where we actually come up with a different process now versus when we started probably 15 years ago, where we actually start the whole process from the doctor telling us, hey, listen, do me a favor, give me what it is that you sell. Because in today's world, right, the typical chiro will go ahead and make their notes over here in a test tube, right? Then they'll go ahead and make a care plan over here, and then they'll learn their technique over here, and then they'll try and figure out what's going on with their fee schedule over here, and then they get concerned and they're worried about and wondered why. Hey, you know what? I don't understand. When a patient wants an accounting of their record, how come it doesn't all fit? Well, it's not going to fit because they weren't created from the same point of view. They're created from different points. And when you marry that, Jeff, with the idea that no one listening to this is ever thinking about their coding compliance just before they thrust. Okay, so what are the top 10 things you're thinking about when you're adjusting? If compliance is one of them, you need your head checked, because not even in my world would it be compliance. That whole idea. So those things need to be extracted. And I hate that. I hate the term CEO thing. That's been so overused, we'll say. It's a CEO mentality. But this truly is a situation where we want our doctors to step out of the practice and actually write down what they sell. Once we know what they sell, we can divvy up those parts into medically necessary, not medically necessary. Look at their equipment, figure out their equipment versus what the FDA says it's used for. Look at their outcomes, look at their techniques, and then build the coding based upon what is appropriate according to CPT. Once that's created, then it's like a piano, left hand, right hand, right? The right hand, we go over, we start making macros that match the care plan that you actually have. So your care plan states out what my technique is, what my outcomes are. All those things get built into a macro set, which gives you workflow to match what it is that you sell. Then on the other side, we have our compliant coupons program and our care plan calculator, where we actually go through and figure out for the doctor what's their fee schedule, what is their max discounts, what is their profitability. And the reason why we did that was because we started looking at what was going on with them, with the doctors understanding medical necessity, and then realizing that they were just discounting to discount. And we found out 92% of the doctors that came to us in practice had a care plan they were selling that lost money. They didn't know. Now, they may be profitable as a whole, but that just means that one section of your practice is subsidizing the other and you have no idea. So once we did that, we started put it all together. And now, man, we got people that start out from brand new, and within 6 months to a year, they're hiring associates. And there's no downtime, there's no issues, there's no problems. Because when a doctor, student, especially students watching this, you go to open your profile, you have the best profile. It's clean. You know what I mean? You have no sin. You've done nothing wrong. It's clean. You want to keep that. And our doctors who are in these situations, we don't end up in audits. And that's one of the things that's really, really interesting about the process is it's not the notes. It's the before process. That's what we figured out, that it just wasn't the notes themselves. It was actually understanding what medical necessity was and training that doctor to understand how that fit into both their philosophy and also what they were selling as far as a care plan. That way, when they sold it, everyone understood, the patient and the doctor and the staff understood exactly what it is the patient was buying. That I sorry for the 10-minute explanation, but that's the actual evolution from just macros into a whole process of understanding what is the insurance companies are asking for, and then how your care plan fits into that profile, so you don't trip an audit wire. And now that's been the key to getting people to understand what it is that they have to do.
Yeah, I can empathize and understand. And I think about it from the marketing world. Many docs are, what do I need to do? Can I just do this? And it's really the why. Why are you doing that? How are you thinking about it? Where are you putting it? The strategy behind it matters just as much as what you're doing at the finish line. And it sounds like the same thing. What's the perfect macro? Well, there is none. It depends upon what you're trying to accomplish, who you are, and what you do.
People ask me all the time, Jeff, what's the best EHR system? And the answer is none of them. And they go, why? And I said, because you suck. And the reason why I say that, I mean that from a loving standpoint, right? Not that you're bad or you're horrible at it, but it's not what you do. You know what I mean? If you spend 80% of your time on the things you enjoy, I can guarantee you 90% of the doctors I talk to don't enjoy documentation, or I'd say 100%. No, I 100%. I know no one wakes up in the morning going, John, I can't wait to talk to John Davila. No one says that. Well, you did today. But I mean, no one else after that, and from a practice standpoint, thinks that, because if they're going to talk to me, it's about something that's going on, right? Yeah. So in this situation, they need to they need to realize, okay, I need to fix these things first because these are the reasons why I'm getting audited. It's not my notes. Because if you see someone once a week for a year, I don't care about how good your notes are. Because the truth is, right, if your notes are the most sensitive thing on the face of the earth, and they're meant to show improvement, and you see someone once a week, how much improvement are you getting once a week?
That sounds questionable.
So the notes are going to say the same thing over and over and over and over again. And that's the problem. So even if you have really good notes, if you don't understand medical necessity, it doesn't help you. Yeah. So that's the reason why, we will sell macros, but we don't like to. We really want people to see what it is that they're doing, because that's the process that they need to change before they actually take notes.
I get it, and I cannot think of anything more important. I know we're getting up against the clock, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask this question before we close. What is the number one thing? What's going on right now? What do docs need to be aware about right now in the world of documentation, coding, and compliance? What's the biggest hot button issue you're seeing in the field?
There's two big ones. The first one is obviously whether or not we have to deal with this vaccine mandate as far as compliance on that stuff. Remember, all those vaccine mandate issues are all for clinics that handle specific COVID type patients, very specific to that kind of situation. Nothing's come out yet as far as anything related to how Medicare is going to kick you out or anything like that. So that's not happening, even though they are managing people in hospitals that way. In private practices, they're not.
Okay.
So that's a good thing. So if that's something like that changes, that's something we're looking at. But right now, that's not the problem at all. And then, the No Surprises Act is another thing that's out there right now that has come out. The idea of having to write off out of network, that's not true. The idea of giving someone some type of estimate, that type of thing, that's true, that you have to deal with. But I think the issues are more along the lines, and I'm going to say this, I know most of your listeners I know as far as like enjoy the cross marketing thing. One of the things that you got to look for, and you might want to look at moving forward, the GFE putting it together as far as the estimate. What you want to know is that in 2023, the referring doctor, if it's part of their care and they refer to you, the patient can ask them for some type of GFE from the doctor. Right? So if you have doctors right now that you're working with, one of the things you may want to do is go ahead and put some type of GFE together that's very general and start supplying that to the doctor's offices and say, listen, in 2023, if they want to know what my fee schedules are for these services, here they are. So when they ask, that way, when 2023 rolls around, you're not bombarding them. Now would be a good time to go ahead and get involved with that right now to say, listen, this is coming up in 2023. I just want to sit down and talk with your staff, because your referral staff, and then say, listen, if someone wants a good faith estimate, here you go. This is our good faith estimate for a typical 10 visit care plan. And then give it to them and say, this is what, that way when it comes up, right now you don't have to, but 2023, that's what's coming. Yeah. So the person who's referring out can be asked for that information. And to be fair, unless they have it, I don't think I would want to make that referral either. Right. And that whole thing. So that's one of the things, especially in this realm of what it is that you do, and this process of cross marketing across different medical specialties. That's one of the things that would be a good idea to go ahead and get out in front of. And if you don't want to give it to them yet, that's totally fine. But at least have the conversation with them, saying, listen, when you're ready, call the doc, say, listen, I know you send me a lot of referrals, just letting you know, I just want letting you know that this is coming up 2023. When do you guys want to sit down and talk about it? Is it September? Is it August? Is it November? I know you don't want to do it now and then have it get lost later. Or if you want to use it now to give your patients now, it's totally fine. Just it's good to have that conversation now, especially if you have a really good relationship with somebody who's been referring to you. That would be a good way to let them know that you're on top of it.
Yeah, I'm going to sit back and grab a Mai Tai here and sip on it. You're doing this is practical advice. This is great. I love it. I'm going to encourage really every doc watching, listening, to connect with your team and get a better understanding of what's going on in their practice before the blue lights come on. That's not as a scare tactic, but just as a get your house in order. Why wouldn't you? Where's the best place for them to connect with you and your team and to learn more?
The best place, obviously, you can find us at customchiroSolutions.com on the website. You can email us info@customchiroSolutions.com. We've customized 33 different EHR systems. So it's out there, and everything from straight chiro to MDDC to some even small surgical type situations. Because basically physical medicine, all that stuff is all macroed or things like that. So that we have all that down. And the big thing for us is just when someone takes a look at it to see, is it not just, is it profitable? Is this a profitable process for me, but does it save me time? I've run into people before that started out as clients, got really mad. I'm making less money. Well, you are, but you were doing 3 things here that were not quite legal, that kind of thing. And they go, oh yeah, sorry. So you get to go home tonight instead of, the whole, the situation. So anyway, but definitely make you faster. And is it faster than not taking notes? No, it's not faster than not taking notes, but it is faster than what most people do. So, in these situations, we're really just trying to get people to understand what the minimum necessary is, and then have one process and become really, really good at it. And if you do that, and the game's easily won. You can have, as we say, we want you to see anybody, anywhere, regardless of who the payer is, regardless of their condition, without fear of retribution from a third party. Yeah. And that's really our goal for our clients, is to be able to do that.
I love it. John, it's been great to connect and chat. We talked about public speaking. We got some document compliance. We covered a lot over this last 25 minutes.
Marketing it.
That's right. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing. And I'm going to encourage, again, every doc out there, if you are listening or watching, connect with John and his team, get an understanding of where you might have some areas that you can improve. That's just going to help you feel better, sleep better. It's going to help your practice in the long term. And it's always worth taking the proactive steps today so that you can have a stronger practice tomorrow. John, thanks so much for coming on and chatting. I really appreciate it.
I do appreciate you having me. Thanks so much. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you so much for watching this video on the Smart Chiropractor. To not miss a single thing that's clinically oriented, marketing oriented, or more, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel today.